What if I told you that the Bible you and I read, love, and trust might not contain every detail of creation, the lives of the great patriarchs, or even the full measure of the laws God Himself gave? Have you ever felt there might be more hidden threads in the tapestry of God's plan that we've never been told? The Book of Jubilees, still preserved in the ancient Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, claims to fill in those gaps, unveiling stories that pull back the veil and offer us a closer look at heaven's design. But here's the question: why was this book banned from most of the Christian world? What could it possibly contain that was considered too dangerous to be read? In this journey we share today, we'll step into the pages of this mysterious work, also called Little Genesis, and we'll see why its 50 chapters were set aside, hidden from the mainstream Bible you and I know. It expands on Genesis in ways that feel almost otherworldly, introducing angels who move through history, revealing a sacred measurement of time given by God Himself, and even issuing commandments that challenge how the world now counts its days. Imagine hearing the words of the Almighty not just in the 10 Commandments, but in an ancient heavenly calendar designed to keep mankind aligned with His rhythms. But the real question is, why did the early church decide we should never see it? What truths in its pages could change how we understand the past, the present, and even the end times? Before we uncover these mysteries, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? And if you're ready to walk with me through this hidden doorway of history and prophecy, type 777 in the comments so I know you're ready. The shocking secrets in forbidden Book of Jubilees they didn't want you to know. And before the seas swelled or the mountains rose, before even the dust of the earth was formed, something else happened that Genesis does not fully describe. On the first day, angels were created. These weren't distant ornamental figures. They were given charge over the very systems that govern life itself. Some oversaw the paths of the sun, moon, and stars. Others carried messages and guarded the eternal law. As Jubilees 2:9 declares, for God ordained that the sun should keep its course according to the divisions of the seasons. Think about that: angels as keepers of time, guardians of the cosmic order, ensuring that the heavens moved exactly as He decreed. But what happens when humanity drifts out of step with God's time? According to this ancient book, disorder follows, festivals shift, holy days are misplaced, and the spiritual rhythm that holds creation together begins to fracture. That's the warning Jubilees whispers to us across the centuries, a reminder that the way we measure time may determine how closely we walk with the Creator Himself. Before we take another step, let's name what Jubilees is really doing to you and me. It isn't merely retelling Genesis, it's daring us to recalibrate our very sense of time, as if a quiet voice were saying, live by the clock heaven keeps. And suddenly the days we count begin to feel like sacred measures rather than empty squares on a page. According to the Book of Jubilees, the Creator ordered a solar year of 364 days, 52 perfect weeks set into 4 equal seasons of 91 days, so that Sabbaths and appointed festivals never drift from their appointed place. A pattern presented not just as mathematics, but as worship, as alignment, as a way for us to walk in step with God's cadence. And the text states plainly, and the year is completed in 364 days. Jubilees 6:31. This vision of sacred time even echoes in the living tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox calendar. 12 months of 30 days crowned by a small 13th month pagum of 5 or 6 days, inviting us to wonder whether this is one of the last modern reflections of that ancient order. By contrast, Jubilees warns that a lunar-driven reckoning unmoors holy days and confuses seasons, not as a minor inconvenience but as a spiritual disorder that pulls a people off God's path. Hear the sharp clarity of its caution. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year. 10 days too soon. Jubilees 6:36-37. And the warning intensifies. For this reason the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and Jubilees. Jubilees 6:38. In other words, when we abandon the divine rhythm, the calendar doesn't merely slip, the soul does. But when we return to the pattern heaven set, time itself becomes a sanctuary, and our weeks, our seasons, our years begin to pray. When we read the opening of Genesis, we walk through the 6 days of creation as though we are watching the world awaken, light piercing the darkness on the first day, the expanse of the heavens formed on the second, the gathering of the seas and the rising of the dry land on the third, the sun, moon, and stars appointed on the fourth, the seas and skies alive with creatures on the fifth, and on the sixth, humankind, shaped in the very image of God. Then comes the 7th day. By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work, and God blessed the 7th day and made it holy. Genesis 2:2-3. Later in Exodus 28:11, the Sabbath is commanded to Israel as a day of rest, a sign between God and his people, patterned after creation itself. But when you and I turn to the Book of Jubilees, that moment takes on an even greater weight. It is not only a commemoration of God's rest, it is described as an eternal law, binding both humanity and the angels of heaven. Can you picture it? The entire cosmos pausing, not just people, but even the hosts of heaven wrapped in a holy stillness as if time itself holds its breath. Jubilees teaches that the Sabbath was sanctified at creation and will be observed in the heavenly realm forever with strict instructions that go far beyond simply ceasing from labor. It commands whoever does any work on it shall surely die, and whoever defiles it shall surely die eternally, so that the children of Israel shall observe the Sabbath throughout their generations and not be rooted out from the land. Jubilees 50:8. The rules are incredibly specific: no plowing, no sowing, no reaping, no traveling beyond one's dwelling, no lighting of fires, and no carrying burdens. Imagine waking on that sacred morning sunlight spilling quietly across your home, and knowing that even fetching water or preparing food could be counted as defilement. The text warns whoever prepares anything to be eaten or drinks on it, who draws water or who carries anything out of his tent shall die. Jubilees 50:12. Would you feel peace in that stillness, or a trembling awareness of God's gaze? Unlike in Genesis or Exodus, where the Sabbath is framed primarily as a blessing and a covenant sign, Jubilees enforces it as a sacred boundary not to be crossed with immediate and eternal consequences for disobedience. In Scripture, the Sabbath calls us to remember and rest. In Jubilees, it becomes the anchor of cosmic order, the heartbeat of heaven, the quiet pulse that keeps angels and humanity in perfect step with the Creator's rhythm. And breaking it is seen not just as sin, but as an assault on the very structure of creation itself. When you think of Adam in the book of Genesis, perhaps you picture the quiet beauty of that sixth day, the dust of the ground forming into the first man under God's own hands, the breath of life entering his lungs, and the Garden of Eden stretching in perfection around him. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 1:27. In Genesis, we see God speaking directly to Adam, giving him the charge to be fruitful, to tend the garden, and to avoid the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's intimate, almost like a father instructing his son in the morning light of a new world. But when you and I open the Book of Jubilees, the story feels different, deeper, more layered. Yes, Adam is still formed on the sixth day, but here something striking is added from the very beginning. He is entrusted with a set of divine commandments, not learned through trial and error, but delivered to him by the angels of the presence. Can you imagine that first encounter? Not just the rustling of Eden's leaves or the flowing of its rivers, but the sound of heavenly messengers imparting laws about the Sabbath, purity, marriage, worship, etched into Adam's understanding before the first sunset of his life. In Jubilees, Adam is not merely the caretaker of a garden. He is the first recipient of a covenant that mirrors the heavenly order itself. The angels teach him, "These are the laws you must keep forever, for they are kept in heaven before the face of God." Jubilees 3:12. It's as if the rhythms of holiness rest on the Sabbath. Fidelity in marriage, purity in life are woven into the very fabric of creation, so that Adam and his descendants might walk in step with the same divine patterns the angels follow. It makes you wonder, could the commandments we so often associate with Moses have been echoing in the world since the very dawn of humanity, whispered first in Eden under the light of that sixth day's sun? After the fall of Adam and Eve, the garden's radiance was replaced by the weight of toil, the sound of rustling leaves, by the silence of separation. Yet it is in the lives of their children that the fracture in humanity truly reveals itself. Genesis tells us with haunting brevity that Cain, driven by jealousy, rose up against his brother Abel and killed him, the first shedding of human blood. But in the Book of Jubilees, this moment carries an even greater heaviness. Cain's act is not just fratricide. It is a conscious rebellion against the divine laws whispered to humanity from the very beginning, a choice that broke the sacred harmony between heaven and earth. Can you imagine standing in that field with Abel's life fading into the dust, hearing the still, piercing voice of God? "Where is Abel, your brother?" Genesis 4:9. The earth itself, Jubilees tells us, cried out for justice. Cain was banished, a wanderer beneath a sky that now seemed to turn its face away. Yet hope was not extinguished. Out of Adam and Eve's grief came Seth, a child born not merely to replace Abel, but to continue the line of righteousness. In Jubilees, Seth is raised under the watchful guidance of the angels of the presence, instructed in the laws of the Sabbath, purity, and offering, laws that mirrored the order of heaven itself. while Cain's descendants built cities that drifted from God. Seth's line preserved the covenant, a living thread that would one day reach Noah, carrying with it the promise that God's ways would not be lost to the earth. Long before the first drop of rain struck the ark, the story of Noah was already being written in the heavens. In Genesis, we read of a world filled with violence, of hearts turned cold, and of the Nephilim, those mysterious giants who stride briefly through Genesis 6:4 before vanishing into the flood's shadows. But in the Book of Jubilees, their presence is anything but brief. Here the veil lifts and we see how the children of fallen angels and human women grew in might, sowing corruption, and how those angels themselves passed down forbidden knowledge, sorcery, bloodshed, and twisted wisdom that bent the very fabric of creation. Picture it for a moment, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness, as though even the wind knew judgment was near. Jubilees shows the flood not simply as nature's fury, but as heaven's deliberate act, a cleansing of both human rebellion and the celestial defiance that fed it. And when the waters pulled back, a covenant was formed. Genesis speaks of God's promise sealed with a rainbow. Jubilees goes further, revealing that Noah was entrusted with laws of purity, sacrifice, and the observance of the Sabbath laws first given to Adam, now renewed for a world beginning again. These were not suggestions, they were safeguards, divine boundaries to keep humanity from returning to the darkness it had barely escaped. In that moment, the earth stood washed and silent, and the question echoed through time: would we remember the covenant or let it slip into the shadows once more? By the time we meet Abraham in Genesis 12, he is already a man called by God, ready to leave his homeland for Canaan without hesitation. Yet in the Book of Jubilees, the story reaches further back, pulling aside the veil on a youth shaped not by faith but by the heavy shadows of idolatry. His father Terah, respected in his community, kept a house filled with carved figures of stone and wood, each one a silent mockery of the living God. Imagine growing up in that dim light where incense rose not to heaven but to lifeless statues, where the air was thick with chants to gods that could not speak. Here Jubilees lets us see the moment a young Abraham's heart stirred with holy defiance. In a scene absent from Genesis, he confronts his father, saying, "My father, what is this idol you worship?" Jubilees 11:16, realizing they were nothing but powerless stone. Abraham burned them openly, the flames dancing like a testimony to heaven, before fleeing into the wilderness to seek the voice that had been whispering in his spirit all along. While Genesis highlights his obedience to God's later command, Jubilees shows him first as a spiritual revolutionary, a man who did not just leave a land but left behind a culture's entire foundation of false worship. And maybe that's why when God finally spoke to him, Abraham recognized the voice. It was the same voice that had been calling him out of darkness since his youth. In Genesis, Abraham appears as a man who hears the unmistakable call of God, leaves the familiar dust of his homeland, and walks into a future built entirely on divine promise. We see him under starlit skies, building altars in silent valleys, and receiving the covenant of circumcision in Genesis 17. There is no mention here of the Sabbath, no record of purity laws or appointed feasts. Those will not arrive until the days of Moses at Sinai. In this telling, Abraham's obedience is deeply personal, an unfolding journey of trust where each step is an act of faith rather than compliance with a revealed code. The focus is on the man, his God, and the unseen land he is promised. Yet in the Book of Jubilees, the frame shifts dramatically. Abraham is not simply a man of faith. He is already walking in the eternal patterns of heaven centuries before Sinai's thunder. And he was taught by the angels concerning the things written in the tablets of heaven, Jubilees 12:25. These angels of the presence instruct him to keep the Sabbath holy, to observe purity laws, and to offer sacrifices in precise order, laws said to have been first given to Adam, preserved through the righteous line, and never abandoned in the heavenly realm. In this account, Abraham is not discovering God's will step by step. He is being initiated into a cosmic covenant that binds heaven and earth. Can you picture it? The stillness of dawn in the highlands of Canaan, the low flicker of a sacrificial fire, and an otherworldly presence revealing secrets older than the world itself. In Genesis, we watch Abraham trust without knowing. In Jubilees, we watch him trained, disciplined, aligned to a calendar and a code that will later be given to a nation. It is as if time itself bends around him, shaping his life into a living prophecy, so that when the law finally thunders from Sinai, its echo has already been alive in one man's footsteps. And then we come to Genesis 17, where we see Abraham standing before God, hearing the solemn command to circumcise himself and every male in his household, a sign sealed in the flesh as proof of the covenant. You can almost feel the weight of that moment. The still air, the unshakable silence, the gravity of an act that would mark not just a man but a people. In the Genesis account, the emphasis is on Abraham's obedience, his willingness to trust and act even when the command is costly and deeply personal. It is a covenant grounded in promise: I will be your God and you will be my people. But when we turn to the Book of Jubilees, the scene expands into something far more ancient and cosmic. Here, circumcision is not merely a token for Abraham's descendants. It is a law older than Abraham himself, written on the very heavenly tablets, a divine blueprint etched before the foundations of the earth, binding both angels and men. And this law is for all the generations forever. For it is an eternal ordinance, ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, Jubilees 15:25. Suddenly, the act is no longer just an earthly ritual. It becomes a point of alignment with the laws that govern the universe itself, an eternal rhythm of obedience that reaches beyond time. Can you imagine Abraham realizing that what he was doing in that quiet desert camp was in harmony with decrees sung in the courts of heaven? Genesis shows us a man obeying. Jubilees reveals a man stepping into a stream of divine order that has flowed since creation. And when you see it this way, circumcision becomes more than an external sign. It becomes the joining of human will to the eternal heartbeat of God. As the journey of Abraham unfolds, we arrive at a moment where the very air seems to grow heavy with silence, where faith itself stands on a knife's edge, the story we know as the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, found in Genesis 22:1-19. In Genesis, it is simply God who calls to Abraham, testing him with the unthinkable command to offer his beloved son. We can almost see that early morning light breaking over the hills, hear the steady crunch of footsteps on the path to Moriah, and feel the unspoken weight pressing on Abraham's heart. Yet when we open the Book of Jubilees, the scene expands beyond the visible, pulling us into a realm where the trial is more than a personal test. It becomes part of a hidden war. Here, Mastema, the prince of hostility, stands before the Lord and proposes this very test, hoping Abraham will stumble. What does it mean when a father's faith becomes a battleground in the cosmic struggle between good and evil? Jubilees reveals that angels stood watch ready to intervene, for this was no cruel spectacle but a revelation of truth. And I stood before him and before the prince of the Mastema, and the Lord said, "Command him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears the Lord." Jubilees 18:10. In that instant, the mountain is transformed into more than a place of sacrifice. It is an altar in the war of realms, a declaration of loyalty to the Creator against the schemes of darkness. And when the knife is stayed, we witness it faith that not only passes a divine test, but overcomes the very whispers of evil itself. Flowing from the great tests of faith that shaped Abraham's journey, we now step into the life of his son Isaac and his wife Rebekah, a woman whose story holds one of the most profound prophecies in Scripture. In Genesis 25:23, during the quiet days of her pregnancy, the stillness within her was disrupted by a divine voice. "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be separated. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Even before Jacob and Esau had drawn their first breath, the course of their lives had been inscribed by the eternal hand of God. Yet in the Book of Jubilees, this revelation unfolds with even greater depth. It is not presented merely as a family matter, but as part of an unshakable cosmic design. Jubilees reveals that Jacob was chosen from the beginning to inherit the covenant, to carry forward the line of righteousness established by Abraham, while Esau was destined to turn away, his descendants rising in defiance against God's chosen people. Imagine the weight upon Rebekah's heart, knowing one son was marked for the covenant and the other for rebellion, even as she felt their movements within her. Jubilees further tells us that both Isaac and Rebekah were given divine knowledge of Esau's nature before the rivalry over birthright and blessing had even begun. This was no simple sibling dispute. It was the first act in a long and cosmic struggle between righteousness and rebellion, a conflict whose echoes would be heard for generations. In the light of Jubilees, every choice Jacob made toward the promise and every step Esau took away from it were threads in a tapestry woven in heaven before time began. It is after the blessing of Abraham had flowed through Isaac that we arrive at one of the most defining moments in the life of Jacob, a moment recorded in Genesis 27, when the voice of an aging father and the trembling hands of a determined son meet in the stillness of a tent. In the biblical account, this blessing secures Jacob's place as the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Yet when we turn to the Book of Jubilees, the story deepens, the air thickens, and the scene widens to reveal not only the passing of a blessing, but the handing down of something far greater, a living stream of divine law carried from the days of Abraham through the lips of angels, now entrusted to Jacob. In Jubilees, after the blessing is spoken, the night does not fall into silence. Instead, there is the sacred rustle of unseen wings, the glow of a light not born of fire, and a voice declaring laws older than nations, the Sabbath purity commands, and the sacred calendar etched on the heavenly tablets. These are not merely human customs. They are eternal rhythms written into the fabric of creation itself. Can you imagine lying under the open sky, hearing the same words that shaped the cosmos, knowing they now rest on your shoulders? And the Lord appeared to him by night and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land whereon you are sleeping I give to you and your seed shall be as the stars of heaven. Jubilees 27:23. In this light, Jacob is no longer simply the heir to a birthright. He becomes the custodian of eternity's laws, the guardian of a covenant that binds heaven and earth, a role destined to shape not just his life, but the destiny of an entire people. So after all we have seen about Jacob and Esau, could their rivalry really be only a passing family dispute? Or was it always meant to be part of something far greater? The Book of Jubilees refuses to let their conflict remain a mere chapter in family history. Instead, it opens a wider, almost unsettling window, one that reveals a vision stretching far beyond two brothers struggling in the womb or clashing over blessings. According to Jubilees, what began as a personal rivalry becomes the seed of an unending struggle between their descendants, a struggle that will echo through centuries. Can you imagine standing at a mountaintop, looking down the corridor of time and seeing not just your children, but entire nations locked in opposition? In the biblical account of Genesis, the story reads as a sequence of family events, the tension between Jacob and Esau rippling through their lives. Yet Jubilees frames it as part of a much greater cosmic design, where Esau's line, often linked with Edom, comes to represent nations that will rise in continual hostility against Jacob's line, the future Israel. This is not simply about borders and battles. It is a spiritual war between righteousness and rebellion, one that the text quietly ties into the unfolding story of the end times. The silence between these verses almost feels like the pause before a storm, a reminder that some conflicts are born not in politics but in heaven's decree. Then the narrative turns to a subject that feels almost ordinary at first glance, the birth of Jacob's 12 sons through Leah, Rachel, and their maidservants. In Genesis, this is a family story, one of love, rivalry, and perseverance. But in Jubilees, even these births are woven into something far more precise and otherworldly. Each child's arrival is not left to chance or the rhythms of human life. Instead, their timing is set by the sacred calendar itself, aligning perfectly with God's ordained schedule. And Jacob's wives and maidservants gave birth to his 12 sons, each according to the time set by the Lord, and their destinies were written on the heavenly tablets. Jubilees 28:12. Picture it, each cry of a newborn not only filling a tent with life, but also echoing in the courts of heaven the name already inscribed on eternal records. In this way, Jubilees transforms family milestones into acts of cosmic significance, making Jacob not just a patriarch of flesh and blood, but a father whose household is the living architecture of God's divine timetable. It's almost impossible to read the story of Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, without feeling the weight of what is lost in a single devastating moment. In Genesis 35:22, we are told that Reuben went up and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, an act not only of moral failure but of deep dishonor toward his father. It is written in such brief words that one might miss the tremor it sent through the family, yet those words carry an unspoken silence, a silence heavy with shame, consequence, and the shifting of destinies. We know from the biblical account that this sin costs him the privilege of the firstborn's inheritance, but Jubilees draws back the veil even further, revealing that this was not simply a personal mistake, it was a violation of eternal law written long before Reuben drew his first breath. It was in truth a breach of a sacred order. In the vision of Jubilees, Reuben's transgression disqualifies him not only in the eyes of men, but in the cosmic record itself, making way for a realignment that had been written on the heavenly tablets since ancient days. Because of his sin, the firstborn Reuben was not reckoned in the inheritance, but Judah was chosen as the prince over his brothers and Levi for the priesthood forever. Jubilees 33:10. Can you imagine what it feels like for the crown you were born to wear to pass into another's hands? Not because of fate's whim, but because heaven itself decreed it. So from here, the story takes on an even greater depth. Judah, the fourth son, steps forward into the role of leader, while Levi, still young but marked by God, receives the priesthood not as an earthly title, but as an eternal mandate. In Exodus 28, we later see Moses and Aaron emerge from Levi's line to serve before the Lord, yet Jubilees makes clear that this was no new appointment. It had been established before the days of Moses, sealed in the heavenly records. And Levi was set apart for the priesthood forever, to offer sacrifices and to mediate between the people and the Lord, for it was ordained on the heavenly tablets. Jubilees 32:17. Think of it, his calling was not decided in the heat of human politics or by the turn of events, but in the stillness of God's eternal plan, where heaven's light touches earth, and the service of one man becomes a bridge between the two. Let's picture it. One moment you are surrounded by your own brothers under the open sky, and the next their hands have pushed you toward a fate you never imagined. In Genesis 37, Joseph is sold into slavery, the air thick with the jealousy his father's love has stirred. We often read it as a story of family betrayal, of wounded pride and favoritism. But in the vision of Jubilees, this moment is far more than an earthly quarrel. It becomes a breach in the very fabric of heaven's design. Here their act is not simply recorded as a wrong between siblings. It is etched onto the heavenly tablets themselves, as though the angels who witness the events are also the scribes of eternal law. The text makes it clear that the sale of Joseph is a violation against God's cosmic order, a sin that will echo through generations unless repentance comes. Can you imagine what it means for your wrongdoing to be written in the eternal records, not just whispered among men? And his brothers sold Joseph into slavery, and their sin was recorded on the heavenly tablets, for they had transgressed the eternal laws, and it was decreed that their descendants would suffer until they repented for their great sin. Jubilees 34:9. In Genesis, we see the brothers' guilt grow heavy over time, their faces shadowed with regret when famine drives them to Egypt. But in Jubilees, the weight is even greater. Heaven itself has marked their act as part of the chain that will lead to Israel's suffering in Egypt. Their envy did not only wound a brother, it shifted the course of history. And yet within this darkness, the silence of God holds a hidden promise that even the deepest betrayal can be woven into a plan for redemption, one that would unfold in the blaze of the Exodus foretold long before. It's humbling when you realize that some events in life aren't just a matter of talent or timing, they're part of a plan, written long before you even took your first breath. In Genesis 41, we read how Joseph rose to power in Egypt because of his wisdom and his God-given gift to interpret dreams, a gift that opened the way from the prison cell to Pharaoh's palace. But when we turn to Jubilees, the picture becomes even more profound. It tells us this wasn't merely the story of a gifted man seizing an opportunity. It was the unfolding of a destiny already inscribed on the heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, Joseph's rise was not an accident of circumstance, but a deliberate step in God's eternal design, setting the stage for both Israel's preservation during famine and their eventual exodus from Egypt. Have you ever stopped to wonder what it must be like to live each day, unaware that heaven has already charted your path toward a moment that will change the fate of nations? Here we also see a detail absent from Genesis: the quiet yet constant presence of angels. The text describes them as sentinels unseen by men, yet moving alongside Joseph from the moment his brothers sold him, guarding his life as though heaven itself held its breath over him. And the Lord sent his angels to guard Joseph on his journey to Egypt, that he might not perish, for his life was precious in the eyes of the Lord, and his path had been written in the heavenly tablets. Jubilees 34:21. In this light, Joseph's dreams were not just glimpses of the future, they were echoes of a script already written in the halls of eternity. And every step from betrayal to throne was part of a divine choreography, where even suffering carried the fragrance of purpose. It's as if we step into a world where the weight of history is already written before a single chain is forged. In Genesis, the moment arrives when a new Pharaoh rises, one who did not know Joseph. Exodus 1:8-14, and the light of favor turns into the shadow of oppression. Yet in Jubilees, this isn't a sudden twist, it's a chapter that had been inscribed on the heavenly tablets long before Egypt's throne was taken by another. Every sigh, every groan of the Israelites was part of a prophecy, a divine sequence that would lead to their deliverance and to the thunder at Sinai when the law would be given. Think of Joseph, once the preserver of his family in famine, now the unwitting bridge leading them into a land where their freedom would be swallowed for generations. In Jubilees, their suffering is not random. It is the tightening of a great spiritual knot. Mastema, the adversary, moves in the unseen, whispering hardness into Pharaoh's heart, stirring his servants to press the yoke heavier on Israel's shoulders. This is not merely politics, it's a battlefield between heaven's design and the rebellion of the unseen realm. Imagine the silence before the first plague fell, a stillness thick enough to feel in your chest, knowing that each act of oppression was drawing the day of liberation closer. In Jubilees, even the cruelty is caught in God's timing, for the suffering becomes the stage on which his power will break Egypt's pride. And when that moment comes, it will not be just an escape from slavery. It will be the fulfillment of a cosmic promise etched in eternity. There's a certain awe that settles over you when you picture Mount Sinai. The rumble of thunder in the distance, flashes of lightning splitting the sky, the air so still it feels as if the whole world is holding its breath. In Exodus, we watch Moses climb into the thick cloud, receiving the law directly from the Almighty's own hand. Yet when we open Jubilees, we discover a deeper layer. These laws were not first conceived on that mountain. They had already existed, written on the heavenly tablets, long before the first sunrise, long before humanity's first breath. According to Jubilees, these tablets are a cosmic record, a perfect blueprint of God's eternal order, guiding both angels in the unseen realms and humans walking on the dust of the earth. We realize then Moses was not crafting something new. He was stepping into a story that had been written before the foundation of the world. The law he received was not simply for the wandering tribes in the desert. It was part of a divine rhythm that governs the entire universe, unfolding exactly when the appointed time arrived. And the law and the testimony were ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, created even before the foundation of the world, so that they might guide all the generations of the children of Israel. Jubilees 6:17. This changes how we see everything. In the Bible, the law's revelation feels like a sudden burst of light at Sinai. But Jubilees draws the curtain back further, showing that patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were already walking in its light long before Moses. Can you picture Abraham resting on the Sabbath as angels did, or choosing his meals according to the same dietary laws that Israel would one day receive? In Jubilees, these men are not simply righteous, they are keepers of a sacred inheritance that had been preserved since creation. And perhaps the most breathtaking claim of Jubilees is that these laws are not just Israel's heritage, they are eternal. They bind heaven and earth together in the same covenant. Angels keep the Sabbath. The righteous on earth mirror the worship of heaven. And the law that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai is eternal and will be observed in heaven and on earth. The angels keep the Sabbath, and the righteous will observe the commandments forever. Jubilees 50:13. It's as if Sinai was never about a beginning, it was about a remembrance, a returning to the rhythm God had sung into creation from the very first day. We are reminded as we turn the pages of Jubilees that the future of Israel was never left to chance. It has always been part of a sacred design, a timeline inscribed on the heavenly tablets since the dawn of creation. This is not merely a record of history, but a divine blueprint that charts the rise and fall of kingdoms, the exile and return of God's people, and the final judgment that will bring every hidden deed into the light. While the scriptures in Genesis and Exodus allow us to witness events as they unfold, Jubilees draws back the veil to reveal that every trial, every deliverance, every season of silence or song was written in advance on the pages of eternity. Here we find that exile is not a random tragedy, but a chapter foreseen. Suffering is not without purpose, and restoration arrives exactly according to the divine calendar. The text insists that nothing, no whisper of prayer, no rebellion, no tear falls outside the scope of God's plan. And throughout it all, the angels stand as watchful guardians and executors of His will. They are not distant figures in painted visions, but active agents descending at the appointed time to separate the righteous from the wicked, to protect those whose hearts remain steadfast. Can you picture that moment, the stillness before the heavens open, the feeling in your chest as unseen messengers draw near, carrying out the decrees written long before you were born? In this vision, even the forces of darkness have an appointed end. Mastema, the chief of the evil spirits whose whispers have fueled oppression and rebellion since ancient days, will be bound and cast into the abyss, a moment that signals the breaking of his power forever. With the enemy defeated, the Messianic kingdom will dawn. Jubilees describes this as the end of the present age and the beginning of God's eternal rule, when his chosen ruler, understood by many as the Messiah, will reign in justice. And the law will not just be known but written on the hearts of the faithful. The final judgment is portrayed with striking clarity: the righteous gathered into the light, the wicked cast into the lake of fire, their rebellion erased forever. And the Lord will establish his kingdom on earth, and the righteous shall rule with him, for the law shall be written on their hearts, and the wicked shall be cast into the lake of fire. Jubilees 50:13. This is the vision of a restored creation, evil silenced, peace unbroken, and the faithful rewarded with an eternity in the presence of the one who wrote their names in his book before time began. And so, as we reflect on this vision from Jubilees, I can't help but feel the weight and wonder of knowing that our lives are not accidents, that every season, whether joy-filled or storm-tossed, has been seen recorded and woven into God's eternal plan long before we drew our first breath. And when we look at the promise that the Lord will establish his kingdom on earth and the righteous shall rule with him, Jubilees 50:13, it is not just an ancient prophecy, but a living hope that reaches into our present moment, calling us to remain faithful no matter what shadows surround us. The same God who spoke to Moses on Sinai and inscribed his law on the heavenly tablets is still guiding our steps today, still writing his law upon our hearts, still whispering in the quiet moments when the world seems too loud. As Psalm 33:11 reminds us, the plans of the Lord stand firm, forever the purposes of his heart through all generations. And this is why we do not walk in fear but in faith, knowing that the same hands that shaped creation are the hands that hold our future. If this journey through God's Word and the hidden depths of Jubilees has stirred something in you, I invite you to share this message so others can also see the beauty of his plan. Leave your thoughts in the comments so we can grow together in understanding, and follow this channel so you won't miss the next step in our exploration of the scriptures, because every time we open his word, we are stepping further into the light he prepared for us. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. And may the hope of his eternal kingdom be the song that carries you through every season until the day we stand together in his presence forever.